Hey there, and welcome back to part 3 of the Hazbin Hotel Steampunk AU Redesign series, where I present each member of the main cast as an oracle card and simultaneously give them a tarot reading to help carve out their place in this alternate universe. Today we will be delving into the Princess of Hell, Charlie Morningstar herself. Charlie, along with Lucifer and Alistair, represent the main 3 point of views this story will be told from, so I'm excited to share her section of the plot with everyone. But first, I want to thank everyone that has taken an interest in this AU so far. It's been a blast weaving this story together through these character exploration videos, and I plan to keep it going, so thank you for coming along. So, as usual, I would like to delve into Charlie's design before tackling what she has to offer in this AU. I have a strange fascination with Charlie as a character, even though her role as the protagonist in the canon series hasn't given me much to latch onto. I think it's her potential, because every time I draw her, she's always a bit more confident in the Princess of Hell side of who she is. You know, the daughter of the devil and all that. So, when I went into this design, I knew I wanted to maintain this refined clothing style that the original boasts. However, her all-red outfit had to go. When looking for references for the style in this AU, I came across a waistcoat vest with ruffles on the collar, and everything else about her fell into place after that. I kept her undershirt red, but replaced the bow tie with a regular tie. The waistcoat features some gold detailing and little gear buttons, which I adore. In my mind, there is a zipper under the panel on the front, and the decorative bit snaps over it as a protective layer. Is it practical? It depends on who you ask. To cater to that wild but refined aura she's meant to have, I modeled her hair to be more similar to Lilith's. I like the idea that her flowing hair could become a part of her signature descriptor amongst sinners instead of Lilith's the longer the queen is missing. Charlie adopting more of her mother's image and a no-nonsense attitude simply feels like the natural first step away from the Charlie we know in canon and the one after Adam's attack. I gave her black pants with golden embroidery down each side of the upper thigh, featuring some golden gears and eyes, of course, as well as some buttons on the bottom to accommodate her hooves. And speaking of hooves, these things are my favorite part of the design. I wanted her hooves to be a part of her proud heritage, but also show off some of her personality. The foot of each hoof is golden, and there are delicate details painted on that lead up to her fur. The fur is at the point of her ankles and is actually red and blonde, not dyed. This choice was one I made to tie her red nails, eyes, and cheeks together with the rest of her body, if you don't account for her clothing choice. It works well in my head, but let me know what you think. I don't know, maybe there's a neat subculture of hoof aestheticians in this world, and what color or design your hooves feature mirrors your class. That might be fun. Her waistcoat tails have snake and apple imagery, which I found to be a fun choice after really thinking about it, because I realized that Charlie, including her final frame design, has more apple snake imagery than Lucifer himself. Now that I have written the beginning of her story for this AU, it fits perfectly with the direction of her character arc. Also, she does have her signature black lipstick, and I am very proud of that because all my previous attempts to put lipstick on characters has ended, poorly. Admittedly, even after finishing this design, Charlie's face still scares me a little bit. I kind of like it though, considering the direction I took her character, but man, she is really pulling out that demonic royalty energy in this illustration. Okay, with the design out of the way, let's get into the story of Charlie, the hotelier. Card 1. Goals and Mindset. The Warrior, representing perfectionism and burnout. Ever since Adam's attack on the hotel, a new kind of spark had lit within Charlie's heart. She'd made a mistake, completely and totally messed up everything she had struggled tirelessly to build. Her friends were there to comfort her, and her father was always around to fix the material damages with little effort. It didn't change the fact that she knew it was all her fault. She needed to do better this time. Another mistake like that would be unacceptable. She wouldn't allow it. Charlie didn't think herself to be one for conformity by any means. She walked into meetings with sticky notes covered in colorful paint, for goodness sake. But she could achieve better outcomes if she simply held herself to a higher standard. If heaven wanted to disregard her plans, then it was about time she looked at things from another angle. Talking about their feelings and doing trust exercises wasn't going to cut it, and she knew it. Now that she looked back on how she approached redemption of sinners, her efforts seemed incredibly lazy. What did she think? Forcing cynical, battered souls to engage in fluffy, upbeat activities was going to make them happier? Was she insane? Well, having a whole legion of angels come down to attempt an extermination of her entire inner circle had a way of putting a perspective on things. Heaven had taken a beloved friend from her. Gone was her hope of peaceful negotiations. This was personal. Speaking of personal, now was the time to get to the bottom of why sinners were in hell in the first place. If she tried to have her friends confront their lives on Earth, would that be the first stepping stone towards their redemption? With this curious thought, Charlie began her feverish efforts to come up with a new game plan. She can see how her long work hours and rigorous planning has begun to concern those around her. But what was new? Others have looked at her with pity all of her life. What's a few more pairs of crestfallen eyes? As she changes her tune, her outlook on the way things work is completely rewritten, and Charlie feels a part of her wither away. She's slowly forgetting what it was to smile genuinely, unless it's for the sake of a friend. That still comes naturally, for now. The nagging hunch that she's lost something important settles like lead in her stomach when the crowds are gone and the lights are out. Alone with her thoughts, clouds that didn't used to tease her mind slowly creep in. She doesn't know how much longer she can do this before her composure starts to fracture. Card 2. Approach to learning. The Patron, representing mentorship and finances. It's time for Charlie to face the reality that she needs help. Really needs it. Baggy's assurance is lovely, and the guests have a way of keeping her rooted, but it's nothing she hasn't heard before. She needs to be taken seriously in hell if she's ever going to be seen as something legitimate in heaven. For that, she needs a mentor. Her father pops into her head, and in a perfect world, he would be the obvious choice. However, he's been so flighty as of late, and she's been too busy worrying about him to even consider the wealth of knowledge he possesses. So instead, surely to his delight, Charlie turns to Alistair. With a cautious foot forward and her head held high, she tells herself that she can maintain the upper hand. Whatever it is that Alistair is hiding from them all, she'll separate it from the advantage his alliance offers, for now. The shadow of their vague and frankly poorly crafted deal haunts her at night. But if there's still a sliver of her that's left that wants to see the best in sinners, by God, she'll use it. Dealing with the sins might be something she has to approach her father about after all, but when it comes to the overlords, she is confident in Alistair's advice. The political landscape of the Pride Ring has changed a lot since she was born, she understands, but she has the luxury of coming into it with a blank slate. Charlie is not bound by the formally established rigidity and tradition amongst the overlords, which makes this time of hierarchical upheaval a perfect stage of which to make her debut. Rosie has also taken an interest in Charlie's goals. The cannibal overlord has been coming around more often under the guise of meeting with Alistair, but Charlie suspects she's really investigating. A project executed by a member of the royal family that might change their entire understanding of how heaven and hell function? Please, a newspaper giant like Rosie would be all over that. But she will admit that the woman has a way with words. Rosie is less abrasive than Alistair, and Charlie oft finds herself warmed by her willingness to assist. In a way, she reminds Charlie of her mother, the mentor she really needs right now. Speaking of her parents, on occasion, out of the corner of her eye, she can see her father watching her interactions with the overlords. A piece of her understands that he may be taking her choice of diverting questions to Alistair and Rosie over him personally. Card 3. Relationship with change. The Thief, representing seizing the moment and selfishness. One day, while agonizing over the newest list of disingenuous guests who needed to be dealt with, Charlie had a vision, or rather, thoughts entered her mind that were not her own. The experience was so raw that she could feel those foreign thoughts deep in her heart, feelings of hopelessness, frustration, and viciousness. So overwhelming that tears stung her eyes. She hadn't realized she'd spaced out until Vaggie was vigorously shaking her to awareness. What was that? Did she fall asleep, or... Her blood ran cold as the sound of Angel's receding footsteps reached her ears from the hallway. It all clicked. Those thoughts and wishes festering in an uncertain mind, they were all Angel's. She'd seen into Angel Dust's soul. Now, she couldn't be certain. It would be logical to ask her dad. He would be the authority on strange inherent powers, right? She didn't even know how she'd activated such magic to begin with. But then again, the guests had been unwilling to share their human lives with her. The most pivotal part of her new redemption plan was the one part none of them wanted to comply with. Maybe if she could just peek at their souls and get an idea? No! That would be the worst imaginable violation of her friend's trust. She couldn't do that. But who was stopping her? If she didn't ask Lucifer about her new power, then nobody would be the wiser. What was a little innocent investigation, right? The only person stopping Charlie was herself and the ridiculous morals she'd adhered to. But as all of those around her constantly reminded, they were in hell. Maybe she could loosen up a bit. With that freeing, horrid realization in the back of her mind, Charlie had a new sense of confidence. With this, she would be able to make headway on her friend's redemption in no time. If she was going to do it, she needed to do it right. Her task now was asking her dad how to harness her energy properly. There was no need to go into specifics. She was just asking in general, you know? It's important stuff. Luckily for her, her focus on getting Alistair to help her learn politics had Lucifer jumping at the chance to be of use to her. Her dad happily walked her through the more delicate side of tuning her inner power, harnessing her second nervous system, as he called it. Actually, it was a nice change of pace. She couldn't remember the last time she and her dad had hung out like this, passionately exchanging ideas with no stakes. By the end, Charlie had gotten a good foundation from Lucifer, and he didn't suspect a thing. She tried not to linger on how his smile turned sad just before she left his room, and how it churned the guilt in her chest. Card 4. The Walker, representing the unknown and a journey. Here's the thing. Guilt doesn't feel the way it used to anymore. In a way, it's become her closest friend. Charlie knew very well that the path she'd chosen wasn't from a place of pure selflessness. Breaking through her companions' carefully constructed walls to view into their pasts, their souls, without their knowledge, is behavior that would have appalled her not a few months ago. But now, she's become numb to the disgust building in her gut. Angel, Nifty, and even Alistair unknowingly enlightened her to sins she'd never thought them capable of committing, and yet she couldn't bring herself to hold it against them. It wouldn't be fair to judge them for their actions, for her own were their own special category of vile. She felt herself spiraling every night, her dreams filled with memories, traumas, and desires that were not her own. Each day, she fidgets at her desk like a hyperactive child, drawing the attention of Vaggie more and more often. Hiding this from Vaggie wasn't part of Charlie's plan, but now she may not have a choice in the matter. It was time for her to accept that this newfound power of hers was spiraling out of control. No amount of lessons with Alistair or focus on energy in the quote-unquote second nervous system was going to stop her friend's memories from interrupting her own perception of reality. Exactly when did she leave behind her moral code in exchange for this progress? Hadn't that been her entire purpose? Going against the norms established by the three realms to prove that peace was an option? Since when had holding herself to a higher standard become so trivial? What would she tell her loved ones? Charlie understood very well that what she'd done was impossible to undo. Now, she finds herself trying to piece together what had made her lose sight of her path in the first place. In the end, all she could guess was the overwhelming guilt. The guilt of Sir Pentius's death. The guilt of losing the hotel. The guilt of keeping Adam locked away like an animal. The guilt of continuing to lie to hell about his existence. The list goes on. It was all too big for her, and somewhere along the way, in an attempt to make sense of it all, she chose a path destined to cause even more pain. So, Princess Charlie is going through a bit of a Villainess mini-arc in this universe. The cards had her writing herself, and I couldn't be happier with the direction I ended up going in. Charlie has always been an odd character for me personally, because nothing about her stands out, but for some reason I have always been drawn to her. After a lot of thinking, I came to the conclusion that I'm attracted to the potential of her character, rather than the version of her we have in canon, if that makes sense. If you just came from my Alistair and Lucifer videos, you might have noticed a familiar card in the mix. The Walker is a card I pulled for both Alistair and Charlie, which coincidentally is the twin of the Pilgrim, according to my deck, who I pulled for Lucifer. This connection between the three of them is really serendipitous because this trio is going to be the anchor of this AU and their respective plot lines. It's also interesting because Charlie adopting Alistair's The Walker card after becoming his apprentice shows how she's slowly accepting his mentality. This card being the Pilgrim's parallel in the form of Lucifer's plotline fits perfectly with Charlie balancing two more experienced people in her life while being unwilling to commit to either of their ideologies. Before I decided not to include it, I drew a fifth card for Charlie. What ended up happening is the card gave me ideas as to what would happen in part 2 of the story, and I figured it would be better to withhold that card until I made a part 2 video after the story progresses. A video like that would probably be a two-parter where I went over a fifth card for every character, but let me know what you would prefer to see. After this, I have Vaggy, Angel, Nifty, and Husk left in terms of characters I have already designed. If you saw my last video, you'll know that Vox has a bit of a different role in this AU, and since flat screen TVs don't exactly exist in this story, his appearance is a lot different. Gonna be honest, I have a vague idea for his design and find myself liking it quite a lot, so maybe I'll do a whole card for him too. Lastly, I had planned an animatic for the beginning of this video similar to Lucifer's, however, it has given me a lot of trouble, so I will let that one loose as its own video soon. I would like to reiterate that I am pulling these cards without any predetermined selections. Each card I have pulled for Alistair, Lucifer, and Charlie respectively has been their first draw. The only exception would be Lucifer, who, I initially pulled 2 of Alistair's cards for, which is, well, you can take that how you will. If you have experience with Oracle cards, then you'll understand when I say that Alistair's story might have been on my mind when I did Lucifer's draw, which screwed it up initially. Ultimately, I'm satisfied with how these 3 characters have come out. It's carved out a very neat image for what the overall story could be, which has prompted me to start outlining the AU seriously. So, if you are interested in reading the Steampunk AU when I eventually release it on AO3, or just want to see other art like in these time lapses, you can check out my other social media for updates, which will be linked in the description. Alright, without any further ado, let's get into the reveal. Card 3, Charlie the Hotelier. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao!